I flew 18 hours to attend my sister's wedding. My father blocked the door and said, "You're not family anymore." 3 days later, they demanded $38,000 over a contract I never signed. I'm a contracts attorney. That was their first mistake. My father stopped me at the door of my sister's wedding and said, "You need to leave," not whispered, not pulled me aside. Said it full voice, facing me in front of the venue coordinator, 2 groomsmen, and a florist carrying an armful of white peonies who froze mid-step like she'd walked into a crime scene. I was still holding my invitation, cream cardstock, gold embossed lettering, Athena Sinclair in my sister Paige's handwriting at the top, the cursive she'd practiced obsessively in middle school. I had carried that envelope across 3 time zones and 18 hours of travel. A red-eye from Portland to JFK, a connecting flight to Raleigh-Durham, a 40-minute rental car drive through October rain because my sister had sent it to me personally. And I had believed with the specific fragile hope of someone who has been burned before and decided to try anyway that this time was different. My father looked at the invitation in my hand, then he looked at me. "Only family," he said. "You weren't invited." For a moment, I genuinely didn't process it. My brain offered several explanations in rapid sequence. Wrong entrance, wrong time, miscommunication, some logistical error that would be resolved in 30 seconds with a phone call and an embarrassed laugh. Then I looked past him and saw Paige. She was standing in the bridal suite doorway at the end of the hall, fully dressed, veil pinned, bouquet in hand. Our eyes met across 40 ft of burgundy carpet. She looked away first. That's when I understood. I handed my father the invitation, not because I was surrendering it, but because I wanted him to hold the evidence of what he'd done. And I turned around and walked back to the rental car, a white Toyota Camry. I sat in the driver's seat with the door locked and the rain tapping the roof, and I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I cried, not for the wedding. I want to be clear about that. I cried because I had been stupid enough to hope again after everything. I didn't know yet that the hope was the least of what they'd stolen from me. My name is Athena Sinclair. I'm 34 years old. I'm a contracts attorney at a mid-sized firm in Portland, Oregon, the kind of job where you spend your days reading fine print for a living. Understanding that the difference between a word and its absence can cost someone everything. I have one sibling, Paige, 31. She is blonde where I am dark-haired, effusive where I am measured. The kind of person who fills a room with noise in a way that our parents have always interpreted as charisma. Growing up, we weren't close, not hostile, just separate, orbiting the same household without much gravity between us. Our parents, Gerald and Miriam Sinclair, live in Cary, North Carolina, in a 4-bedroom colonial they've owned for 26 years. My father is a retired project manager. My mother volunteers at their church and manages the social calendar of their immediate world with the focused intensity of a small-scale diplomat. Family image, specifically the appearance of a warm, successful, unified family, is her primary project. I moved to Portland at 24 for law school. I stayed because I built a life there. I visit North Carolina twice a year, or I did until 3 years ago when a disagreement about my mother's handling of my grandmother's estate. Specifically, her decision to exclude me from it without telling me, then deny she'd had any role in it, created a rupture that we papered over, but never actually repaired. I should have recognized the pattern earlier. I'm a contracts attorney. I read documents for a living. And yet, when it came to my own family, I kept accepting verbal assurances and treating silences as agreements rather than voids. A void is not a contract. I know that now. Paige announced her engagement to Tyler Marsh 14 months before the wedding. Tyler is an environmental engineer, quiet, steady, the kind of man who thinks before he speaks. I liked him immediately. I sent a card, called to congratulate them, asked to be involved. Paige said she'd be in touch about the bridal party. She never was. I told myself it was a busy season. Wedding planning is overwhelming. She'd circle back. She didn't circle back. 4 months before the wedding, the invitation arrived, my name in Paige's handwriting. Ceremony at Whitmore Estate in Raleigh. October 14th, 2 p.m. I booked flights that afternoon. The drive back to the rental car place from the wedding venue took 43 minutes through steady rain. And I spent most of it in a specific suspended state of shock. The kind where your hands operate the vehicle correctly, while your mind is still standing in that burgundy carpeted hallway holding an invitation your father just told you was meaningless. I returned the car, booked an earlier flight, checked into an airport hotel because my return ticket wasn't until Sunday and I couldn't afford to change it. room 214, double-bed polyester duvet. A view of the parking structure, I ordered room service. I barely touched and sat on the bed with my phone in my hand, waiting for something, a call from Paige, a text from my mother. Some acknowledgement that what had just happened was at minimum a conversation worth having. My phone was quiet until 9:47 p.m. My mother, your father said, you made a scene at the venue. Are you okay? I stared at the message for a full minute, made a scene. I had walked in, stood in a hallway for 30 seconds and left without saying a word. If that was a scene, I was operating at a deficit of information about my own behavior. I typed back, I didn't make a scene. Dad told me to leave. I left. He was just trying to keep the day smooth. You know how these situations can get complicated. I ended the call, complicated. There it was again, that vague, catch-all word my family always used whenever someone else's complaint became an inconvenience. I flew home on Sunday and returned to work Monday morning. I told my colleague and closest friend, Marcus Webb, an associate at the same firm with 8 years of experience and the person who'd helped me through more professional crises than I could count, everything that had happened. He listened without interrupting before finally saying, that story has a second chapter, give it a week. He was right about the second chapter, he was wrong about the timing. It took only 3 days. Wednesday, 11:14 a.m. I was reviewing a commercial lease amendment when my cell phone buzzed. Mom, I almost ignored the call and let it go to voicemail, but I answered. Athena, her voice carried that familiar tone she reserved for uncomfortable conversations, carefully controlled, a little too warm, like the verbal version of a perfectly practiced handshake. We need to talk about the venue bill. I set my pen down. Okay, the Whitmore estate sent the final invoice this morning, $38,400. She paused. Your name is listed on the contract as the guarantor. The room didn't spin, my heart didn't pound. People expect dramatic reactions. Instead, I felt something much more familiar, a professional stillness. The same feeling I get when reading a contract and finding a clause that absolutely shouldn't exist. I never signed anything, Mom. Your name is on the contract. I understand my name is on the contract. I'm telling you I never signed it. Another longer pause. Well, the venue has it on file. I immediately opened my calendar, checked my travel records, searched my emails, and reviewed my phone history. Based on the wedding date, the venue paperwork would have been completed roughly 10 to 12 months earlier. During that entire period, I'd been living in Portland. I hadn't visited North Carolina since Christmas the year before. I had never received an email, phone call, or DocuSign request from Whitmore Estate. Mom, I said, I review contracts for a living. Explain exactly how my signature ended up on a venue guarantor agreement that I never saw and never signed. Silence. Then she simply said, your father will call you later. The line went dead. I sat quietly for about 90 seconds before opening a new browser tab and searching for Whitmore Estate's event coordinator. The next morning, at 10:30, I reached Sandra Hewitt. She sounded exactly like someone who managed large wedding venues every day, professional, calm, and experienced at handling difficult conversations. I introduced myself and explained that I had been listed as a guarantor on a contract I had never signed. I heard typing. There is a guarantor agreement on file, Sandra said. Athena Sinclair, that's my name, I replied, but I didn't sign it. The typing stopped. Miss Sinclair, I'll need to retrieve the original documentation. I'd appreciate a certified copy of the guarantor agreement, including the signature page. I can also provide my passport for signature comparison. Another pause, longer this time. I'll need to speak with our legal department. Of course, I said, my email is on file. Please send whatever you're able to share. After hanging up, I sat quietly for a moment before calling Marcus into my office and closing the door. I explained everything, the phone call, the $38,000 invoice, and the claim that I'd signed as guarantor. He stayed silent for 4 seconds. Someone forged your signature. It wasn't a question. That's what it looks like. Yes, Athena, he said, leaning forward. That's a felony. I know. Want me to step in? Not yet. I want to see the document first. My father called that evening at 6:22 p.m. I let the phone ring twice before answering. I wanted those 2 rings. I needed to be completely calm before picking up, because I already knew what this conversation was going to be. Athena, his voice carried the confidence he always relied on whenever he believed authority alone would settle the matter. This venue issue needs to be resolved. You signed the guarantor agreement. The payment is due in 30 days. Dad, did you forge my signature? Silence, not thoughtful silence, caught silence. That's it's a yes or no question. He hung up. I immediately noted the time, the duration of the call, and every word, or more accurately, the lack of an answer in the Notes app on my phone, an old habit from depositions. Document everything. Memory fades, paper doesn't. The PDF from Whitmore Estate arrived Friday morning at 8:47, 11 pages. I opened it on my monitor and reviewed it the same way I review every contract, carefully, line by line, never assuming any section is unimportant. Page 3, Guarantor Agreement, my printed name. A blue ink signature underneath. I opened my desk drawer, removed my passport, and placed it beside the monitor. I compared my real signature, the looping capital A, the slightly high cross on the T in Sinclair, and the heavier pressure on the final letter with the one on the contract. At first glance it looked convincing. Someone had clearly practiced, but the S was wrong. Mine closes, this one stayed open. The pen pressure was too even. My signature naturally varies. And the capital A lacked the slight leftward tilt I'd had since college. Whoever signed it had studied one of my old signatures, probably from a tax return or documents connected to the estate dispute 3 years earlier, and practiced until it looked believable. Believable to a stranger, not to me. At 9:15 a.m. I called Rachel Opper. Rachel had been my closest friend in law school and now worked as a paralegal at Hendricks & Muir, a criminal defense firm in Durham, North Carolina. With 12 years of experience, she'd seen more felony cases than many attorneys twice her age. Very little surprised her anymore. I need to talk through a forgery issue. Personal or client? Personal. A brief pause. How bad? Someone signed a $38,000 guarantor agreement using my name. I have the contract and my passport. The signatures don't match. I heard her old wooden chair creak, the same chair she'd refused to replace for years. What state? North Carolina. Wake County. Yes, forgery and uttering a forged instrument, she said immediately. Class H felony. Potentially up to 25 months depending on the circumstances. She paused. Who did it? I told her. She stayed quiet for a long moment. Athena. Document absolutely everything before speaking to anyone in your family. Print the contract. Print your passport signature. Record every conversation with dates, times, and exact quotes. I've already started. Good. Call me before you do anything else. After we hung up, I stared at both signatures side by side once again. My father had walked into Whitmore Estate. He had taken a pen. He had written my name in blue ink on a legally binding financial agreement. Then he handed it to a complete stranger as though it belonged to him. $38,000, my name. My liability, his signature. 2 days later, on Sunday afternoon, another email from Sandra Hewitt at Whitmore Estate appeared in my inbox. She shouldn't have sent it. The email contained internal details from the venue's investigation, but she sent it anyway. I've always believed Sandra Hewitt, the event coordinator, understood someone was being wronged and quietly chose the right side. The email explained that my guarantor agreement had been submitted in person by an older man on November 12th. I checked my records. I was in Portland that day, with client meetings and emails proving I was over 3,000 miles away. My father had gone to the venue, signed my name to a $38,000 contract, and hoped no one would notice. The following Sunday, my mother invited me to a family brunch where my father planned to explain everything. I knew it was an attempt to pressure me into accepting responsibility. This time I came prepared with a manila folder containing the guarantor agreement, my passport signature, Sandra Hewitt's email, and a summary of the facts. Rachel reviewed everything the night before and told me the evidence was airtight. At the brunch, my father claimed I had agreed to guarantee the wedding expenses and was refusing to honor my commitment. After he finished, I calmly placed the documents on the table. Aunt Caroline compared my real signature to the forged one, and the room fell silent. When she asked my father if he had signed my name, he finally admitted it, saying they had no other option because their credit was ruined. The family was stunned. Uncle Roger called it what it was, forgery. Tyler admitted he'd only recently learned the truth, and Paige couldn't defend what had happened. I gathered my papers and said I wasn't pressing charges, but if my name was ever used again without permission, I wouldn't be so patient. Then I left. 3 months later, Whitmore Estate filed a civil claim against my parents after confirming the signature was forged. My father never called again. My mother sent one short text and I simply replied, I am. I didn't need to argue or raise my voice. I only needed page 3, my passport, and the truth. The ink said everything that needed to be said. He signed my name, the ink knew.